The metallic taste of recycled air filled Commander James Wilson's lungs as he crept through the abandoned research facility on Kepler 186f. His combat suit sensors picked up faint energy signatures deeper within the structure, contradicting the facility's supposed abandoned status. 3 weeks of covert surveillance had finally paid off. Something was definitely happening here, far from prying eyes. "Control, I'm picking up unusual readings," he whispered into his comm, similar to the energy spikes we detected during the diplomatic summit disappearance. "Copy that, Commander," Lieutenant Reed's voice crackled in his ear. "Remember, this is strictly reconnaissance. Do not engage unless..." A scream pierced the silence, echoing through the facility's corridors. James's enhanced hearing picked up the distinctive harmonic overtones of a Centaurian voice. His heart rate spiked. They'd finally found her. "Control, we have confirmation. Ambassador Zara is here. Initiating rescue protocol." "Negative, Commander. We don't have authorization." James switched off his comm. Sometimes asking forgiveness was easier than getting permission, especially when lives were at stake. The missing Centaurian ambassador had been the galaxy's strongest advocate for human-alien cooperation. Her disappearance had nearly sparked an interstellar incident. He moved swiftly through the corridors, following the sound. His augmented vision pierced the darkness, revealing signs of recent activity: scuff marks on the floor, displaced dust patterns, the lingering warmth of recently used equipment. The screams grew louder as he approached what appeared to be a converted laboratory. Through the reinforced window, he saw her. Ambassador Zara was strapped to an examination table, her iridescent skin dulled with pain. 3 figures in environmental suits surrounded her, operating equipment James recognized from illegal weapons research. They were torturing her, methodically and scientifically. James's combat training kicked in automatically. He analyzed angles, positions, threats. The environmental suits meant they weren't Centaurian, probably human extremists from the Earth First movement. Their weapons were standard military grade, nothing he couldn't handle. Without hesitation, he triggered his suit's stealth systems and breached the door. The first attacker went down before they realized they were under attack, a precise strike to the cervical spine dropping them instantly. The second managed to raise their weapon before James's boot connected with their chest, sending them crashing into delicate equipment. The third attacker proved more challenging, managing to fire off 2 shots that James's armor absorbed before he closed the distance. They grappled briefly before James's enhanced strength prevailed, ending the fight with a controlled throw that left his opponent unconscious but alive. 30 seconds. Clean and efficient. "Ambassador?" James approached the table carefully, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. "I'm Commander James Wilson, Earth Special Operations. I'm here to help." Zara's multifaceted eyes focused on him, showing signs of recognition despite her obvious pain. "Commander, dangerous, trap." Her warning came a moment too late. Alarms blared throughout the facility as hidden security systems activated. Heavy blast doors slammed shut, and the ventilation systems began pumping in an ominous green gas. "Hang on," James said, quickly releasing her restraints. "This is going to get interesting." He helped Zara to her feet, noting how she moved with surprising grace despite her injuries. "Can you run?" "I can keep up," she replied, her translator giving her words a musical quality even in this dire situation. "But Commander, you don't understand. This facility, what they were doing here, it's worse than anyone imagined." "Tell me later," James said, checking his suit's tactical display. "Right now, we need to focus on getting out alive. My ship is 3 levels up, but with the security systems active." "There's another way," Zara interrupted. "During my sessions, I memorized their patrol patterns. There's a maintenance shaft that leads directly to the surface. They use it for smuggling equipment. James raised an eyebrow behind his visor, impressed. Even under torture, she'd been gathering intelligence. Lead the way, Ambassador. They moved through the facility like shadows, Zara's knowledge complementing James's tactical skills. Twice they had to hide from security patrols, pressed together in darkness while heavy boots marched past. James couldn't help noticing how Zara's skin seemed to shimmer slightly in the dark, adapting to match their surroundings. The files hadn't mentioned that Centaurians had limited camouflage abilities. As they climbed through the maintenance shaft, Zara spoke quietly. They wanted information about Earth's defensive capabilities. About weaknesses in human psychology. They're planning something, Commander. Something that could destroy any chance of peace between our species. Who's they? James asked, helping her over a particularly difficult section. That's the truly frightening part, she replied. Both humans and Centaurians. Working together. They believe war between our species is inevitable, so they're trying to start it on their terms. Before James could respond, an explosion rocked the facility. The maintenance shaft shuddered, and warning lights began flashing throughout the structure. They're destroying the evidence, James realized. We need to move faster. What about the data? Zara asked. Everything I learned while they held me captive. James tapped his helmet. My suit recorded everything since I entered the facility. Including what you just told me about their plans. Now come on, I didn't go through all this trouble to rescue you just to have us both die in a collapsing building. A ghost of a smile crossed Zara's alien features. My hero, she said, with just enough irony to make James chuckle despite their situation. They emerged onto the planet's surface just as the facility began to collapse in on itself. James's ship waited exactly where he'd left it, its stealth systems keeping it hidden from the facility's sensors. As they lifted off, watching the facility disappear into a sinkhole of its own making, Zara turned to James. You know this isn't over, she said softly. By saving me, you've placed yourself at the center of a conspiracy that spans galaxies. James programmed the course back to Earth, feeling the familiar thrill of adventure despite himself. Ambassador, I think this is the beginning of a very interesting partnership. The ship disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind a destroyed facility and a mystery that would change the course of human-alien relations forever. The debriefing room at Earth Command Headquarters felt impossibly small as James faced down the panel of stern-faced officials. Admiral Harrison's scowl deepened as he reviewed the mission logs for the third time. Let me get this straight, Commander Wilson, Harrison said, his voice carrying the weight of decades of military service. You directly disobeyed orders, compromised a covert operation, and potentially sparked an interstellar incident. All to rescue one alien diplomat? With respect, Admiral, James replied, standing at rigid attention, Ambassador Zara's intelligence has already proven invaluable. The facility wasn't just a torture center, it was a research station dedicated to studying how to provoke war between our species. That's a convenient story, General Roberts interjected, her cybernetic eye whirring as it focused on James. But where's your proof? The facility was destroyed. Not all of it. The room fell silent as Zara entered, her iridescent skin now restored to its full, shifting brilliance. She moved with the fluid grace characteristic of her species, but James noticed she still favored her left side slightly. Some wounds took time to heal, even with advanced medical technology. Ambassador, Harrison acknowledged, clearly uncomfortable with her presence in a classified military briefing. This meeting is classified, yes, Zara interrupted smoothly. Just like the meetings where certain members of both our governments discussed the benefits of a controlled conflict between our species. She produced a small crystal, its surface swimming with holographic data. My captors were thorough in their documentation. James watched the faces around the table carefully as Zara inserted the crystal into the room's holographic projector. Some showed genuine shock at the revelations that flickered before them: corruption at the highest levels, weapons development programs disguised as peace initiatives, carefully orchestrated incidents designed to increase tensions between humans and Centaurians. Others, he noted, showed no surprise at all. "This is troubling," Admiral Harrison admitted finally. "But surely you understand, Ambassador, that we can't simply take your word for." The building security alarms suddenly blared to life. James was moving before anyone else could react, tackling Zara as energy weapons fire shattered the window. The air filled with the acrid smell of plasma discharge as armed figures in stealth suits breached the room. "Down!" James shouted, drawing his sidearm while covering Zara with his body. Years of combat training took over as he assessed the situation. 6 attackers, mixed human and Centaurian physiology, using military-grade weapons that shouldn't exist according to official treaties. The room erupted into chaos. General Roberts went down first, her cybernetic systems shorting out from some kind of targeted EMP. Admiral Harrison managed to activate the room's defensive systems before a precision shot took him in the shoulder. James's return fire dropped 2 attackers, but the others pressed forward with coordinated precision. These weren't common assassins, they moved with the efficiency of Special Forces operators. "The crystal!" Zara called out, her voice steady despite the danger. "They can't be allowed to destroy the evidence." James nodded, understanding immediately. While security forces would be responding to the attack, their unknown enemies likely had agents in place to delay them. This wasn't just an assassination attempt, it was a cleanup operation. He reached for the crystal, but one of the attackers got there first. The figure's helmet retracted slightly, revealing a face James knew all too well. Colonel Richards? The betrayal hit him like a physical blow. His former commanding officer, the man who'd recruited him into special operations, was working with the conspirators. "Sorry, kid," Richards said, though he didn't sound sorry at all. "But some fires need to be lit. For the greater good of both our species." "That's where you're wrong," Zara said. Before anyone could react, her skin flared with brilliant light. The Centaurian ability to modulate their bioluminescence, normally used for communication, became a weapon as she released a burst of energy that overloaded visual sensors and organic eyes alike. James didn't hesitate. Fighting blind, he relied on his other enhanced senses to target Richards. They crashed together in a brutal close-quarters struggle, Richards's experience matching James's augmented strength. "Think, James," Richards growled as they grappled. "War is coming whether we want it or not. We're trying to control it, to minimize the damage. By torturing diplomats? By betraying everything we stand for?" James drove his knee up, finally breaking Richards's grip. "That's not control, it's just another kind of surrender." The crystal arced through the air as Richards fell, and Zara caught it with inhuman grace. The remaining attackers fell back as building security finally breached the room, but James knew they'd already achieved their real objective. Now everyone knew there were traitors in both governments, but they had no way to know how deep the corruption went. As medical teams swarmed in to treat the wounded, Zara approached James. "Your superior was right about one thing," she said quietly. "War may be coming. But not between humans and Centaurians." James nodded grimly, watching as Richards was taken into custody. "The real war is between those who want peace and those who profit from conflict. And it's already started." "They'll try again," Zara warned. "The evidence we have threatens everything they've built. Let them try." James checked his weapon, mind already racing with plans. "But first, we need to get that data somewhere safe. And I think I know just the place." As they left the chaos of the briefing room behind, James couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The conspiracy they'd uncovered was bigger than either of their species, and stopping it would require something unprecedented: true trust between humans and Centaurians. Looking at Zara, seeing the same determination in her alien features that he felt in his heart, James knew that trust was possible. They just had to survive long enough to prove it to everyone else. The Artemis station hung in space like a jewel against the backdrop of Jupiter's swirling storms. Once a military outpost, it had been converted into a joint human-Centaurian research facility after the initial peace accords. Now, it served as the perfect hiding place for fugitives with nowhere else to turn. James stood at the observation deck, watching distant ships patrol the space lanes. Each light could be friend or foe, there was no way to know anymore. Behind him, Zara's voice carried from the communication array, speaking rapid-fire Centaurian to her remaining loyal contacts. 3 more colonies hit, she reported, joining him at the window. Her bioluminescence had dimmed with exhaustion, but her determination remained unshaken. The pattern is escalating. They're trying to force both our governments into a military response. And it's working, James replied grimly. Earth Command has moved the Third Fleet into position near the Centaurian border. One wrong move from either side. We need to move faster. Zara's hand brushed his arm, her touch sending an unexpected current through him. Over the past weeks, they'd grown closer than either had anticipated. There was something about facing death together that broke down barriers, even interspecies ones. The data crystal proved the conspiracy exists, James said, turning to face her. But we still don't know their endgame. Why push so hard for war? The cost would be astronomical. Perhaps that's exactly the point. The new voice caused both of them to spin, weapons drawn. A figure emerged from the shadows, Director Thane, head of station security. His cybernetic implants gleamed in the starlight. At ease, Thane said, raising his hands. If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't have made it to the station. You know something, Zara stated, lowering her weapon slightly. Thane nodded. I've been tracking unusual financial transactions. Massive investments in weapons manufacturing, medical supplies, reconstruction materials, all through shell companies linked to both human and Centaurian officials. They're positioning themselves to profit from the aftermath, James realized. War would make them trillions. While decimating both our civilizations, Zara finished, disgust evident in her voice. A sudden tremor shook the station. Warning klaxons blared as emergency lights bathed the corridor in red. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace, the station's AI announced. Unknown configuration. They're charging weapons. They found us, James muttered, already moving. Thane, get the evidence to Earth Command. Zara. Don't even think about leaving me behind, she interrupted, falling into step beside him. Her skin rippled with combat patterns, a Centaurian battle reflex he'd come to admire. They sprinted through the station's corridors as the first impacts rocked the structure. The observation deck's windows polarized automatically, protecting them from the blinding flashes of energy weapons fire. This is different, Zara noted as they reached the hangar bay. Previous attacks were surgical strikes. This is a full assault force. They're done playing games, James agreed, racing toward his ship. The sleek vessel had been modified with both human and Centaurian technology, making it uniquely suited for their mission. They know we're close to exposing everything. More explosions rocked the station. Through the hangar's force field, they could see the battle unfolding. The station's defenders were overwhelmed, facing ships that seemed to combine the best of both human and Centaurian military technology. James. Zara's voice was urgent. Look at their attack pattern. They're not trying to destroy the station, they're hurting us. He saw it too. The enemy ships were forcing them toward a specific vector, away from both Earth and Centaurian space. They want us alive. Probably to make an example of us, Zara said grimly. Show what happens to those who oppose the natural order of conflict. James's hands flew over the ship's controls, preparing for launch. Too bad we've never been good at following orders. The hangar bay erupted in chaos as boarders breached the station's defenses. Energy weapons fire crisscrossed the space as station security engaged the infiltrators. Through the chaos, James caught glimpses of their attackers, soldiers in advanced combat suits that concealed whether they were human or Centaurian. "Ready for something crazy?" he asked, finalizing the launch sequence. Zara's skin flickered with what he'd learned was amusement. "With you?" "Always." James triggered the ship's weapons, not at their attackers, but at the hangar's structural supports. The resulting explosion created a cascade of debris that provided perfect cover for their launch. They shot out of the hangar like a bullet from a gun, their ship's hybrid engines screaming as James pushed them well past recommended tolerances. "They're pursuing," Zara reported from the tactical station. 7 ships, no, 8. All armed with prototype weapon systems. Good thing we've got a few prototypes of our own. James engaged the experimental stealth system they'd acquired from one of Zara's contacts. It wasn't fully tested, but right now, untested was better than dead. The ship shuddered as enemy fire bracketed them. James rolled and weaved through the barrage, his augmented reflexes working in perfect harmony with the ship's enhanced systems. Beside him, Zara coordinated their countermeasures, her natural Centaurian ability to process multiple data streams making her an ideal tactical officer. "We can't run forever," she said, her hands dancing over the controls. "And we can't fight them all. We don't have to." James plotted a course that would make most pilots think he'd lost his mind. "We just have to make it to the Jupiter gravity well. Think you can handle a slingshot maneuver?" Zara's skin pulsed with excitement. "You're going to use Jupiter's magnetic field to amplify our stealth system's effect." "Risky, but brilliant." "I learned from the best," he replied, catching her eye. The moment stretched between them, full of things unsaid. Then reality intruded as another blast rocked their ship. Together, they turned to face the challenge ahead, knowing that their next move could determine the fate of both their species. The massive form of Jupiter loomed before them, its eternal storms promising either salvation or destruction. As they dove toward the gas giant's turbulent atmosphere, James realized that something had changed between them. In fighting to prevent a war between their peoples, they'd found something worth fighting for, a future where humans and Centaurians could be more than just allies. But first, they had to survive. The ancient mining facility on Europa's ice-covered surface wasn't much, but it offered something precious: time. James worked frantically at the communications array while Zara kept watch, her bioluminescence dimmed to barely a glimmer in the darkness. "The Jupiter maneuver worked better than we hoped," she reported, scanning their sensor feeds. "No signs of pursuit. The magnetic interference completely masked our trajectory." "Small victories," James muttered, splicing together salvaged components. Their ship had taken heavy damage during the escape, forcing them to seek refuge in this abandoned outpost. "But we're running out of options. The conspiracy has deeper roots than we imagined." A holographic display flickered to life, showing news feeds from both Earth and Centaurian space. The images were grim: border skirmishes, terrorist attacks, diplomatic breakdowns. Everything they'd fought to prevent was happening anyway. "Look at this," Zara said, her voice tight with concern. She highlighted a financial report. "Remember what Director Thane said about following the money? These corporations aren't just profiting from conflict, they're manufacturing it." James joined her at the display, noting how naturally they moved in sync now. Weapons shipments deliberately routed to fall into enemy hands. Relief supplies diverted to create artificial shortages. They're orchestrating a crisis. But why? Zara's multifaceted eyes reflected the holographic light. The scale of destruction they're planning, it goes beyond simple profit. Before James could respond, their perimeter alerts triggered. Multiple contacts approaching through Europa's endless ice fields. The facility's ancient sensors couldn't identify them, but they moved with military precision. They found us. James reached for his weapon, but Zara caught his arm. Wait, she said, her skin pulsing with rapid thoughts. These readings, they're not using stealth systems. They want us to know they're coming. A transmission cut through their communications, Commander Wilson. Ambassador Zara. This is Director Thane. We need to talk. James and Zara exchanged glances. Could be a trap, he said. Could be our only chance for answers, she countered. Minutes later, they stood in the facility's main chamber as Thane entered with a small team. The director's cybernetic implants showed signs of recent damage, and his team looked equally battle-worn. The station? James asked, though he already knew. Lost, Thane confirmed grimly. But we got the data out. More importantly, we found what they were trying to hide. He produced a quantum storage device. This isn't about war profiteering. It's about evolution. The device projected a series of classified documents, research papers, experimental data, genetic sequences. Zara's skin flashed with shock as she processed the information. They're using the conflict to force adaptation, she whispered. The stress of war, the mixing of populations, the selective pressures. They're trying to engineer the next step in both our species' development, Thane explained. Their research showed that controlled conflict accelerates evolutionary changes, especially in populations with advanced medical technology and genetic enhancement capabilities. Playing God with billions of lives, James growled, disgusted. And the profit angle? Funding, Thane said simply. War is expensive, especially one designed to last generations. New alarms blared. Real ones this time. The facility's sensors detected multiple ships entering Europa's orbit. Not pursuit vessels, capital ships. A fleet. We're out of time, Thane announced. They're moving ahead with the final phase. Simultaneous strikes on major population centers, designed to trigger full-scale war. How long? James demanded. Hours. Maybe less. Thane handed him the quantum storage device. Everything you need to expose them is here, but it won't matter if the shooting starts. Once the missiles fly, there's no going back. Zara's skin rippled with determination. Then we stop the missiles. Impossible, one of Thane's team protested. They're launching from multiple sites, both human and Centaurian space. You can't be everywhere at once. We don't have to be, James said, an idea forming. He turned to Zara. Your bioluminescent communication, it's actually a form of quantum entanglement, isn't it? That's how your people communicate instantly across space. Her eyes widened with understanding. The facility's transmitter, if we could modify it. We could piggyback on the quantum network, James finished. Broadcast the truth to every ship, every colony, every planet. Simultaneously. It would burn out your neural implants, Thane warned. Maybe kill you both. James met Zara's gaze. In her alien features, he saw the same resolve he felt. They'd come too far to stop now. Better to die preventing a war than live knowing we could have stopped it, she said softly. The facility trembled as the first weapons platforms moved into position overhead. Their time had run out. Either they would change the course of history, or history would record this as the day two civilizations began their march toward mutual destruction. Director, James said, not taking his eyes off Zara, get your people clear. This is going to get interesting. As Thane's team evacuated, James and Zara began their desperate work. The facility's transmitter would need extensive modifications, and they had minutes at best. But as they worked together, their movements perfectly coordinated, James realized something important. The conspirators had been right about one thing: conflict did drive evolution. But they'd missed the most important part. Real change, real growth, didn't come from fighting against each other. It came from fighting together, from reaching across the divide to find something worth protecting. Above them, the fleet prepared to launch their apocalypse. But in this frozen outpost, a human and a Centaurian prepared to show the universe a different way forward, or die trying. The modified transmitter hummed with dangerous energy, filling the Europa facility with an otherworldly glow. James's neural implants burned as they interfaced with the quantum network, while Zara's skin pulsed with increasingly intense patterns of light. They had one chance to prevent catastrophe, and failure meant the death of billions. Quantum synchronization at 60%, James reported through gritted teeth. But the connection's unstable. The network wasn't designed for this much data, Zara replied, her voice strained. Her natural ability to manipulate quantum states was the only thing keeping the jerry-rigged system from collapsing. We need more power. Above them, the conspiracy's fleet moved into final attack position. Their sensors showed missile silos opening across both human and Centaurian space, each carefully positioned to ensure maximum devastation and minimal chance of survival. "They're starting the launch sequence," James announced, watching the tactical display with growing dread. 10 minutes until point of no return. Zara's skin flashed with sudden inspiration. "Your neural implants, they're quantum capable, aren't they? That's how they process data so quickly." "Yes, but," James stopped as he realized what she was suggesting. "If we link them directly to your quantum communication abilities, it could give us the power we need." She met his gaze. "But the feedback would be incredible. Fatal, most likely." James managed a grim smile. "We were probably dead anyway." They worked quickly, Zara's knowledge of quantum mechanics merging with James's technical expertise. The modified transmitter grew brighter as they connected it to both their nervous systems, creating a hybrid network never before attempted. Pain lanced through James's skull as the connection stabilized. Through the quantum link, he could feel Zara's consciousness brushing against his own, alien yet somehow familiar, like looking at the same truth from a different angle. "Remarkable," she whispered, her voice echoing both in his ears and his mind. "This is how you see the world." "This is how we both see it," he replied, understanding flowing between them. Different perspectives, same reality. Warning klaxons blared. The fleet had begun its final countdown. "Now or never," James said, reaching for her hand. Their fingers intertwined as the quantum connection surged to full power. Through their shared consciousness, they broadcast everything, not just the conspiracy's plans, but the truth behind them. The fear that drove them, the arrogance that blinded them, and most importantly, the fundamental flaw in their logic. Every screen, every neural feed, every quantum-capable device in both human and Centaurian space lit up with their message. But it wasn't just data they were transmitting. Through their unique connection, they shared the experience of their journey, a human and a Centaurian learning to trust, to understand, to grow together rather than apart. The pain was excruciating. James felt his implants burning out, while Zara's quantum abilities strained beyond their limits. But they held on, their shared determination stronger than their individual suffering. In orbit, the first missiles launched, but they never reached their targets. As the truth spread, crews refused orders. Ships broke formation. The carefully orchestrated apocalypse began to unravel. "It's working," Zara managed through their neural link. "But the feedback, we can't sustain this much longer." "Just a little more," James insisted, though he could feel his consciousness starting to fade. "Have to make sure it sticks." The facility's systems began to overload, circuits melting under the unprecedented power flow. Through their quantum connection, James and Zara shared one final moment of perfect understanding. They had shown both species a glimpse of what was possible when fear gave way to trust, when difference became strength rather than weakness. The transmitter exploded in a cascade of quantum energy. The last thing James felt was Zara's presence in his mind, their shared satisfaction at having changed the course of history. Then darkness. James awoke to the soft hum of medical equipment and the familiar antiseptic smell of a hospital. His neural implants felt strange, new, he realized. Upgraded. "Welcome back, Commander," a familiar voice said. Director Thane stood at his bedside, looking more relaxed than James had ever seen him. "You've been unconscious for 3 weeks. Zara?" James asked immediately, his voice rough from disuse. "See for yourself." James turned his head to find another bed next to his. Zara lay there, her skin pulsing with weak but steady patterns of light. Her multifaceted eyes opened as if sensing his attention. "Your timing is impeccable," she said softly. "I woke up yesterday." "The broadcast?" "Worked better than we could have hoped," Thane confirmed. "The conspiracy's been exposed. Their leaders are being rounded up on both sides. But more importantly, you two proved something everyone thought was impossible." Through his new implants, James could still feel a faint echo of their quantum connection. Not the overwhelming merge they'd experienced, but something subtler, a bridge between their different ways of perceiving the universe. "The scientists are fascinated," Zara commented, her skin flickering with amusement. "Apparently, we've demonstrated an entirely new form of human-Centaurian interaction. The medical technology developed to save you is already being adapted for wider use," Thane added. "Voluntary quantum linking between species, it's revolutionary. The exact opposite of what the conspiracy wanted, ironically. Evolution through cooperation rather than conflict." James reached out, and Zara's hand met his halfway. The touch sent subtle quantum resonances through both their systems, not the overwhelming connection they'd shared before, but something sustainable. Something that could grow. "So what happens now?" he asked, though he was looking at Zara rather than Thane. Her skin rippled with patterns he was learning to read as hope. "Now we build something new. Together." Outside their hospital room, Earth's sun shared the sky with a Centaurian diplomatic vessel, its quantum drives pulsing in harmony with human satellites. The war that never was had given way to something far more interesting, the first steps toward a genuinely unified future. It wasn't going to be easy. There would be challenges, setbacks, moments of fear and doubt. But looking at Zara, feeling the potential in their quantum connection, James knew it would be worth it. After all, the best stories weren't about avoiding conflicts, they were about choosing the right things to fight for.